My name is Michael Grayson, 34 years old. I'm a tech engineer, living alone in a compact apartment in Denver with a view of the Rocky Mountains. I once thought I had found peace, but some wounds never heal, and some phone calls pull you back to the past you've tried to bury. I stood at the door of my apartment, phone in hand. The screen lit up with a short message from my mother. "I'm sick, Michael. Can you come home?" Just 10 words, but they cut like a knife, slicing through the wall I'd built between myself and my family over the past 2 years. I looked out the window. The snow-capped mountains were faintly visible in the twilight. Denver had been my escape, the place where I rediscovered myself after leaving my father's company. But now I knew I had to return, not for my father, but for my mother, the only person in the family who never saw me as a traitor. I packed a few clothes, stuffing them into an old backpack. Before closing the door, I glanced back at the apartment, a simple, clean space with a few technical books on the table and a guitar I rarely touched. It was my world, separate from family drama, from whispers of money and power. But the past, like a predatory beast, always finds a way to drag you back. The drive from Denver to Boulder, where my family lives, takes only an hour, but each mile felt like a lifetime. I turned on the radio, trying to soothe my mind with old country tunes, but memories surged like waves. My father, Walter Grayson, 63, is a tall man with a voice that rumbles like thunder. He's the head of a mineral mining company, a small empire he built from nothing. To him, the company isn't just a business, it's his honor, his lifeblood. And me? I was once his right-hand man, the eldest son he expected to take over everything. But it all fell apart 4 years ago. I discovered that my father's company wasn't just mining stone and ore, it was mining greed. They destroyed forests, polluted rivers near the mines, and worse, they evaded taxes through accounting tricks that I, as the engineer in charge of data systems, stumbled upon. I confronted my father, not in anger, but with hope that he would stop. "We can do better, Dad," I said, my voice trembling. "We don't have to destroy everything to make money." He looked at me, his eyes cold as steel. "What do you think you know about this world, Michael? Do you think businesses survive on ethics?" That was the first time I realized my father was no longer my hero. He was a man consumed by ambition. I left the company soon after, no shouting, no accusations, just quietly clearing my desk and disappearing. My father called it betrayal. He never forgave me, and I never sought his forgiveness. My younger brother, Tyler, then 27, chose to stay. He was the company's financial manager, a brilliant man, but always living in our father's shadow. Tyler never understood why I left. "You're ruining your life," he said the last time we met. I didn't respond. Some things can't be explained when your heart knows what's right, but words fail to convey it. Boulder appeared before me, its familiar streets and wooden houses nestled among the trees. I pulled up in front of the family's large home, a 2-story mansion with a sprawling garden where I used to run and play as a child. The garage door was wide open, and I saw my father standing there, wearing a checkered shirt, holding a wrench as he worked on an old truck. He looked up, catching my eye. No smile, no nod, just heavy silence, as if I were a stranger. "Michael," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm back for Mom," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. "How is she?" He gestured toward the house. "The doctor says she needs rest. Cancer stage 2. But she's tough, you know that." I nodded, brushing past him, feeling like I was walking through a stone wall. Inside, the faint smell of disinfectant lingered. My mother lay on the couch in the living room, much thinner than the last time I saw her. Her silver hair was neatly tied back, but her eyes still sparkled, as if the illness couldn't steal her spirit. "Michael, my boy," she said with a weak smile, reaching out to me. I knelt beside her, taking her hand. It was cold, but her grip was firm, as if she were trying to hold me there. "I'm sorry I didn't come back sooner," I said, my voice cracking. "Don't apologize," she whispered. "I just wanted to see you. And Tyler too. Our family needs to be together." I nodded, but I knew family was no longer a simple word. Tyler arrived that evening with his wife, Sarah, and their 5-year-old son, Ethan. Tyler looked older, with a few gray strands in his hair, but his smile was as warm as ever. "It's been a while, big brother," he said, giving me a quick hug. Ethan ran over, wrapping his arms around my leg, shouting, "Uncle Mike," with excitement. I picked him up, feeling my heart melt. But when my eyes met my father's, sitting at the head of the dinner table, I knew this meal wouldn't be easy. Dinner was tense. My mother tried to share old stories about our childhood camping trips, but my father ate in silence, his eyes occasionally flicking toward me as if he wanted to say something. Tyler, on the other hand, talked more than usual, as if trying to fill the void. "The company's expanding," he said eagerly. "We just signed a big deal with a partner in Nevada. Dad thinks this could be our breakthrough year." I nodded, but said nothing. I didn't want to dredge up the past or spark conflict. But then my father spoke, his voice icy. "Are you going to ask about the company, Michael? Or are you still too busy with your Save the World projects?" The table fell silent. My mother looked at me, her eyes pleading. Tyler stopped chewing, his fork frozen in midair. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I'm doing my work, Dad. I have no intention of interfering with yours." "Of course," he said, his tone biting. "You're good at running away. You think you're noble for leaving, but you're just an ungrateful kid." "Walter," my mother interjected, her voice weak but firm. "That's enough." I stood, excused myself to my mother, and left the table. I didn't want to argue, didn't want to upset her. But as I stepped out into the backyard, I could feel my father's gaze burning into my back. I knew he'd never forgiven me, and perhaps I'd never forgiven him either. That night, I slept in my old room, where photos of Tyler, my mother, and me from beach trips still hung on the walls. But sleep didn't come easily. I lay there thinking of my mother and all she'd sacrificed to hold this family together. I thought of Tyler, how he chose to stay with our father even though he likely knew the company's dark secrets. And I thought of my father, the man who was once my idol, now just a shadow consumed by ambition. The next morning, I decided to clean the garage to help my mother, a simple task to avoid facing my father. The garage was dusty, filled with old boxes, tools, and mementos from when my father still worked with his hands. While cleaning, I found an old metal box wedged under a pile of tires. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside was an old hard drive, the kind the company used for data storage. A sticker on it bore the company logo and handwritten text, accounting 2018 to 2020. My heart raced. I knew I shouldn't, but curiosity won. I took the hard drive to my room and plugged it into my laptop. What I found made my blood run cold. Files detailed bribes sent to local officials, falsified reports to evade taxes, and worse, an internal email referencing a mining accident 6 years ago. A worker had died, but the company covered it up by compensating the family and suppressing the information. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like the world was collapsing around me. I copied the data onto a USB, my hands trembling. I didn't want to make a scene or destroy the family, but I knew from that moment, everything had changed. I placed the hard drive back where I found it, but deliberately left it slightly out of place so my father would know someone had touched it. I wanted him to know. I wanted him to feel the pressure, just as I was feeling it. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest. My mother was still lying on the couch, frail but managing a smile when she saw me bringing in coffee. "Did you sleep well, my boy?" she asked, her voice gentle. I lied, saying I was fine, but her eyes seemed to see right through me. She was always like that, always knowing when I was hiding something. I sat beside her, sharing a few stories about my work in Denver, about the technical projects I was working on, but my mind kept drifting back to the hard drive, those secrets, and my father. He appeared at the living room door, wearing a clean shirt, his hair neatly combed, but there was something in his eyes that sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't the usual anger, but a coldness, as if he was calculating something. "Michael," he said, his voice steady, "come take a walk with me." I wanted to refuse, but my mother's hopeful gaze made me nod. We stepped out into the backyard where tall pine trees cast long shadows. The morning air was cool, but I felt stifled. My father walked ahead, hands in his pockets, his steps slow and deliberate, as if he were choosing his words carefully. "What did you find in the garage yesterday?" he asked, not turning to look at me. My heart skipped a beat. I knew he'd noticed the hard drive had been moved. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Just cleaning up, Dad." The garage was a mess. He stopped and turned to face me. His eyes were sharp as knives. "Don't play smart with me, Michael. You think I don't know you've been rummaging through things?" I didn't answer right away. I knew he was probing, but I wasn't going to let him control the situation so easily. "If you're worried about what I found, why don't you just say it?" I replied, my voice low but firm. He gave a short, humorless laugh. "You always think you're right, don't you? You think you can dig up the past and judge everything, but you don't understand, Michael. The world doesn't work the way you want it to. Does your world work by covering up someone's death?" I blurted out, unable to hold back. The words hit like a bullet, and I saw his face harden. I knew I'd crossed a line. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into, son. If you're smart, you'll forget what you saw, for the sake of all of us." I stood there, watching him turn and walk away, feeling as if a boulder was pressing down on my chest. His words weren't just a warning, they were a threat. And for the first time, I realized how far my father was willing to go to protect his secrets. I returned to Denver the next morning, my mind in turmoil. My apartment was the same as always, small, tidy, with early morning light streaming through the window. I checked the USB in its hidden compartment. The documents on it were like a ticking bomb. I sat at the table and tried to focus on work, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Boulder, my father's threat, and my mother, lying there fighting cancer. I called David, a prosecutor friend, telling him I had sensitive documents and needed advice. "What are you getting into, Mike?" he asked, concerned. "If this is big, you need to protect yourself. Send me a copy." I hesitated. Sending the data meant no turning back. My father would be investigated, the company would collapse, and my mother. I didn't know how she'd handle it. But if I stayed silent, I'd live with guilt for the rest of my life. I promised to send it later. The next few days, I felt uneasy. I noticed a black truck parked too long on my street, a strange call with no one answering. I told myself I was being paranoid, but after the conversation with my father, I wasn't sure. My 34th birthday was approaching. A quiet dinner alone was my plan. But then my mother called, her voice weak. "A birthday should be spent with family," she said. "Invite Tyler and his family over. I want you to be happy." I couldn't refuse. I called Tyler, who enthusiastically agreed. "Count us in. Ethan's been dying to see Uncle Mike." I smiled, but unease lingered. Tyler was now my father's right-hand man. I feared they might be conspiring against me. The birthday arrived. Tyler, Sarah, and Ethan came in the afternoon, full of smiles. Ethan rushed in, hugging my legs. "Uncle Mike." I brought cookies. I laughed, picking him up, my heart lightening. We sat around the table, sharing stories. I tried to relax, but every thought of my father sent a chill down my spine. Around 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. A delivery man held a large box. "For Michael Grayson," he said. Inside was a chocolate birthday cake. A small card read, "Happy birthday, Michael." From an old friend. No name, but the handwriting felt familiar, like a former business associate of my father's. I frowned, but didn't want to ruin the mood. "Wow, that's gorgeous," Sarah exclaimed. "Probably an old friend," I said casually. Ethan demanded we cut the cake. I smiled, but deep down, I didn't want to touch it. Something felt off. "You guys dig in," I said. "I'm cutting back on sweets." Tyler laughed. "You're such an ascetic, Mike." He cut a big slice for Ethan, then one for himself. Sarah declined. I sat there, watching Ethan devour his slice, frosting on his face, while Tyler teased me. I laughed, but my eyes kept drifting to the cake, unable to shake my unease. After they left, I felt like I'd walked through an invisible trap. The next morning, my father called. His voice was unusually gentle. "Did you have a good birthday, son?" It was nice, I hesitated. I invited Tyler's family over. His tone shifted, sharp and biting. "What did you just say?" Tyler's whole family was there. "Yeah, Mom said I should." He hung up abruptly. I stood there, confused. My eyes drifted to the leftover cake, and a horrifying thought flashed through my mind. No, it couldn't be. My father wouldn't. But then I remembered his threat. 30 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Sarah, her voice trembling. "Ethan and Tyler, they're sick. In the hospital. Can you come right away?" My heart stopped. "I don't know," Sarah sobbed. "The doctors say it's poisoning. Acute liver failure. Ethan's critical, Michael. Tyler's in a coma. Please come now." I bolted out of the apartment. On the drive, I tried to piece it together. The cake, my father's words. I didn't want to believe it, but a part of me knew. At the hospital, Sarah was clutching Ethan's jacket. "They started vomiting this morning," she whispered. "The doctors say their condition is critical." I demanded to see the doctor, who confirmed severe poisoning. "We're running tests," he said, "but their condition is very serious." My mind spun with images of the birthday cake and my father's voice. As I sat in the hallway, my father walked in, his gray suit impeccable, his eyes tense. He murmured something to Sarah, then faced me. "Michael," he said, his voice icy. "Are you okay?" I stared at him, rage igniting. "You know what's going on, don't you?" I said in a low voice. "The cake. Your call. What do you know?" What are you talking about? He frowned. You think I had something to do with this? You're out of your mind. Don't play dumb. I snapped. That cake was sent to my house. Now my brother and nephew are poisoned. You think this is a coincidence? He didn't flinch. You're accusing your own father without evidence. You think I'm a monster who would harm my own family? His words hit me. I wanted to believe him, but I remembered the hard drive, the threats. You told me to forget what I found, I said. For whose good? Yours? The company's. He shook his head. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm here because I'm worried. I took a deep breath. I'll find the truth, I said, my voice resolute. And if you're involved, I swear I won't let you get away with it. He stared at me, then turned and walked away, leaving me there, my heart pounding. I left the hospital soon after. Back at my apartment, I saw the remaining cake. I carefully wrapped it and contacted a friend at a private lab. I need you to test this, I said. I suspect it's poisoned. Do it fast. My friend, Greg, heard the urgency. Bring it over now, Mike. 3 days later, Greg called. Mike, sit down, he said, his voice trembling. There's poison in the cake. Amanitin, a highly toxic compound from mushrooms. Odorless, tasteless. The dose, it's enough to kill. My blood ran cold. The cake was meant for me. If I hadn't passed it to Tyler and Ethan, I might be the one in the hospital. I hung up, my hands cradling my head. Could my father really have done this? I looked at the USB on the table. A cold determination rose within me. I opened my laptop, copied all the documents, the accounting files, the bribe emails, the accident report, and Greg's lab report, and compressed them into an encrypted file. I sent it to David, my prosecutor friend. David, I wrote, this is everything. My brother and nephew are in the hospital because of it. I trust you'll know what to do. I hit send. Sending those documents meant I had put my father in the crosshairs of the law. His company could collapse. My mother. I didn't know how she'd cope. But I couldn't stop, not when Tyler and Ethan were fighting for their lives. The days that followed, I tried to focus on work, but my mind was always on the hospital. Sarah called daily. Ethan's still critical, she'd say, her voice hoarse from crying. Tyler still hasn't woken up. I drove to the hospital almost every day, sitting by Ethan's bedside, telling stories, hoping he could hear me. Seeing my brother, hooked up to machines, broke my heart. I avoided my father. He left calm voicemails, asking if I was okay. I couldn't respond. 3 weeks later, David called. Mike, we've gone through the documents, he said. This is heavy stuff. We've opened a formal investigation. The FBI is stepping in. What about the cake? I asked. David hesitated. We're tracing the order. It led to a dummy account linked to a subsidiary of Grayson Minerals. We don't have direct evidence tying your father to it yet, but we're digging. You did the right thing, Mike. Over the following weeks, I heard about my father through the news. Grayson Minerals was under investigation for bribery and tax evasion. His name was in headlines alongside corruption and scandal. The company's stock plummeted. My mother called, her voice weaker than ever. Michael, what's happening with your father? What do you know? Mom, I'm not sure, I said, but I'm trying to do the right thing. I just want our family to be at peace, she whispered. Her words cut like a knife. 2 months later, David called again. Mike, we've got more evidence. An ex-assistant of your father's ordered the cake, claiming he was acting on instructions. We're building the case. I slumped in my chair. I had done the right thing, but the cost was becoming painfully clear. The weeks that followed were a blur. Thankfully, Ethan began to recover, but the damage to his liver was permanent. He would need medication for the rest of his life. As I held his small hand, I couldn't stop thinking about his frosting-smeared smile. I had passed him that cake. Tyler, however, wasn't as fortunate. One morning, Sarah called, her voice shattered. Michael, Tyler's gone. His liver, it stopped functioning. It felt like the floor collapsed beneath me. I sat there numb. We held a small funeral. My mother attended in a wheelchair, frail and weak. My father, under house arrest, didn't show. I stood there, staring at Tyler's coffin, wondering if I could have done anything differently. While I drowned in grief, David's investigation moved swiftly. Mike, we have enough to charge your father, he said one afternoon. Bribery, tax evasion, covering up the accident, everything's been verified. My father was sentenced to 15 years in prison. There wasn't enough evidence to convict him for the poison, but the case remained open. Grayson Minerals filed for bankruptcy. The empire my father built was nothing more than ashes. I left Denver a few months later. I chose a small town in Oregon called Astoria. My new apartment overlooked the ocean. It was a place I could breathe. I found a job at a renewable energy startup. My colleagues knew nothing about my past, and I liked it that way. But every evening, I faced myself. I kept a photo of Tyler and Ethan on my desk. My heart ached. I called Sarah every week. "He keeps asking about his dad," she'd say. I don't know how to answer. I felt a deep, unrelenting guilt. My mother passed away not long after Tyler's funeral. I returned for her funeral, feeling like I'd lost the last piece of my family. My father wasn't allowed to attend. Before leaving Boulder for the last time, I visited the old family home. It was empty, a shell of memories. In a closet, I found a box of letters my mother wrote. One read, "Michael, my boy, you're stronger than you know. Don't let pain define you." I tucked it in my pocket and left without looking back. In Astoria, I lived a quiet life. I no longer hated my father. The anger had cooled, replaced by a deep sadness. He was a man imprisoned by his own ambition. I once thought the truth would set me free. But justice, I realized, doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes the cost of truth is a loss that can't be undone. I started keeping a journal to understand myself. I wrote about the lessons I'd learned. The biggest was about forgiveness, not for my father, but for myself. I'd blamed myself for everything, but I realized I could only do what was right, even when it hurt. If I could say something to anyone reading this, it would be, cherish your family, but don't let it hold you back from what's right. The truth might tear you apart, but silence is crueler. And above all, live a life you won't regret. I'm still learning how to do that. One morning, I stood on the Astoria shore. I took out my mother's letter and reread its final lines. "Don't let pain define you." I folded it back, letting the sea breeze ruffle my hair. I didn't know if I'd ever find complete peace, but I knew I was trying. And maybe that was all I could do.